Okay, so this is Nathan Meredith here. I'm going to show you a little bit about the AWS features that we use for our capstone project. So here on the AWS console, there's quite a few different things that we've used. One of the first ones that we had to set up was all the IAM users and roles. So as you can see here, I'm not going to go through all of these, but we had to set up several for Dynamo and the data pipeline. Down here we set up the text messages and emails and all these other ones. So all these different roles were tied into all of these other features that we had to use. So in here in the AWS Internet of Things, our ComfortCribs, this is our thing, and this is if we come into it, we had to set up the certificates for it to link up with the Raspberry Pi. And this, I think, Nate Monk is going to cover. So I'm not going to go too deep into that. But we did have to set up that, and like I said, here are the different certificates that we had to set up. And we also had to set up a policy. And all of this is tied in with each other here. So the next section that we had to set up throughout is these different rules. And this is what allowed IoT to perform different actions depending on what we needed. So our main one here is temp hum, and what this does is it pulls from the Raspberry Pi. This is the topic that we gave it, and it's inserting a message into the DynamoDB table. I'll show you that next. And because we couldn't ever get the DynamoDB working properly, it's also sending the messages directly to our Amazon S3 bucket. I guess I can show you a little bit more into these if you like here. So setting up DynamoDB was a little bit different since it's a NoSQL database. But these are the values that it's pulling from the Pi, so it knows what's coming into it. And like I was mentioning, here's one of the roles that we had to set up for this feature. Go back here. One more. So that was our main one. We've got different ones here also for when the temperature and the humidity is too high or too low. I'll show you one of those real quick. So as you can see here, we set it up. If the temperature is higher than 120, it's going to send a text message. Right now it's set up to send text messages to my phone, so we set these ranges pretty high and low, so hopefully my phone won't blow up. We'll have to deactivate these after this project here. But once again, we had to set up separate roles and topics and such for these to be able to link in and actually work properly. So those are the main rules that we had to set up. Going on to the next things, the testing using the MQTT protocol. So on the Raspberry Pi, like I mentioned, he had Nate Monk set up my RPI/temp as the topic that he's publishing to. So right now I'm subscribed to it, and so one of the big breakthroughs was when we started seeing the humidity and temperature come through, and right now it's not on, so I can't show you the live data coming through, but I think we presented on that. So this was a really big breakthrough, so we could see how it was coming through and then change it up on the Pi side so it would come in cleaner. So prior to using DynamoDB, we did try setting up Amazon RDS, and we weren't very successful with that. We didn't see how that was going to connect very easily, so we didn't go too heavily into that. Then we tried out DynamoDB. So we come in here to the tables, and we set up, this is a test one here, but we set up temp hum, and come to the items here, and one of my biggest breakthroughs was when this was actually working properly. We had the IoT side showing that it was getting Raspberry Pi information, but then to have it actually show up here and connected to the DynamoDB was pretty huge. So for a while, this was just showing up blank. And we'd sit here and refresh, and nothing would happen. So here's each of the each of the times that the Pi was sending data into DynamoDB. So you see the serial number and timestamp are just the two not columns, but the two pieces of the table that we set up when we created it. And then this data is just this JSON format information of, here's the device ID. If I could scroll over further, I could show you. Well, I guess I could. I don't know where it went. But you can see here the humidity is coming in as a string, and there's that, and then all the other information there. Is this coming in as one file rather than a column for humidity, a column for temperature? So this was a new thing for all of us to try to figure out. So then once we had it here, well, we couldn't pull it from the website, from DynamoDB, so we had to figure out how to get it to S3. And after a bit of research, we found out that the AWS data pipeline we set up, it pulls from DynamoDB and can send it directly to S3. So these are just a couple of the pipelines that we did. I'm not actually going to do it, but I'll show you a little bit of what we did here. So they had these templates, and they have all these different options. And so this one right here was pretty simple: export DynamoDB table to S3. So I tried that out, saw some tutorials on it. It was a little bit tricky to set up properly for it to actually work, but it is pretty simple once we figured that out, and it worked fine. We even did try out, where is it? This one here, load data from S3 into Redshift near the end, trying to get the data cleaned up so we can use it properly. But there's a pretty hefty fee to use Redshift, it looks like, so we didn't actually use that. But once you did this one, it changed this up here, and then you just chose the table that you wanted to use from DynamoDB, and you chose the folder in S3 that you wanted to go to. This was the big thing here, was it's west-2, not just west-1. So that was a really easy fix to solve there. And then this is just when you want it to perform. And so we just did it a couple of different ways. Then it showed up here in our S3 bucket. So we set up ComfortCribs bucket test here. And when the pipeline sent the data into the S3, we'd get this file here, which was separated up by the date and time that we sent it. And if you go into there, you've got these different files. But if you try to open up this one here, it would come through just as this JSON format file that we were having difficulty making it look good on the site. It was coming in, here's a timestamp as a string, and the timestamp itself, and here's the serial number, string, and that. And with then you had this extra field here, data. We weren't sure what the M was, but then you've got device ID, string. So this part right here is kind of throwing everything off. We couldn't really format it really well. So this was one of our big hiccups, was trying to figure out what to do with this. So sending it through the pipeline also had the problem that even if we could fix that file, that one file right there, and pull this file from the website, the next time we would send information from DynamoDB to the S3 bucket, it would have a different date and time stamp folder with a different file that we wanted the information from. And this was just a big headache trying to figure out how we're going to solve that. So we tried a couple different things, but we ended up just sending that file directly from IoT, and so that's what this file here is. So the Raspberry Pi was sending data to DynamoDB, so we'd still test things, but then sending the current temp and hum to this file here, which came up still in the JSON format, but it was a little bit easier to work with. So you just had the heading and then the data, and the heading and the data. It didn't have that extra data string messing things up. And so with this, we could pull this directly into the website and clean it up properly. And that was easier to figure out. The only problem is, of course, is then we didn't have the historical data, S3, or the Pi was just sending in this current temperature in Hume and overwriting this file. So it just kept coming in with current data only, and then pulling that to the website. And as we were working with some of these other things, just a couple other AWS features I worked with a little bit was Amazon Glue, or AWS Glue. And so we had to set up a table. This was really confusing, but it was supposed to change the JSON format into more of a CSV kind of format, which was really complicated. I don't really, let's see. So like we broke them down into more columns. It's not showing it here, but it did clean it up, but then it still wasn't in you couldn't pull from Amazon Glue into the website. So that didn't work out at all. But what it did send it to is to Amazon Quicks or AWS QuickSite. And so you've got this table thing set up here, and it's just a visual thing like Tableau. But again, we couldn't integrate QuickSite with the website. So I didn't work with this much more than just throwing in the data just to see a quick little table of what we had. And then I just kind of stopped here because they said we couldn't get that to the website at all. So that's those are the features that we used in AWS, and it was really neat to see how all this came together.